This is a tarot reading for the Chinese New Year, for the entire year of the dragon, which starts on February the 10th. Now, it's the lunar New Year, so it isn't exactly a year, but it lasts around a year. And February the 10th is quite late, so the date shifts every year. But it's somewhere around the end of January, beginning of February always. If you're unsure of what Chinese zodiac sign you are, if you look in my notes, there's a crib there which lets you know. And it's based on the year that you were born, rather than the month that you were born. But if you're born at the end of the year, it's a little bit more complicated, and you'd need to look it up. So, this is a reading for the entire year of the dragon, but for the sign of the goat. I have to say, looking at this spread, it doesn't look a wonderful spread. Now, before I go on, what I need to tell you is this is not a fortune telling. It taps into energies that will impact on your conscious and subconscious throughout the year. You have free will, so you can change things. Very hard to swim against the tide of an energy, but you can use energies to your advantage. But yeah, it doesn't look great to me. The central card, however, is a card that I think is very positive, and this runs throughout it. So I need to tone down what I'm saying in the light of that, because the central card is the King of Swords, a king of knowledge, a king who understands things. Yeah. Is this about world events, or is this about things personal to you? Well, we'll only find out later, but it could be that this is about world events. If we look to the past, bottom right, you've sort of seen these things before, and you're somewhat stoical about it. Well, are you stoical? If you're saying, I've seen it before, and this is going to happen, and it's going to be terrible, then it probably will be. But if you're more stoical and say, well, I got through it, seen this before, and much more hopeful, then you will be creating your own fate. However, right now, we have a card of deception. And let's face it, we've all been deceived recently. But this is more deception. And in the future, we have even more deception. Bitter deception, stabbed in the back, which brings an ending to something. The card that leads to the outcome is deception yet again. So all about deception, all about deception. And of course there's massive deception going on in the world, and maybe it's just you waking up to this deception. But if you see everything as deception, then everything will be. What would change the outcome is another sudden and abrupt, could be the same. It's a sudden and abrupt ending, but it could be the same one as this betrayal in the future. Could be. So I don't want to say there are two sudden and abrupt endings. The outcome isn't necessarily negative, but I think it could be interpreted negatively. And that is multiple opportunities, but some of them are not what they seem. There's some poison chalices there. Gosh, I'm trying to be positive, but it's difficult. I think it really is about world events and your awakening, as I hate people calling it that, but you're awakening to what's been going on. one of the problems I have with, I don't think I can even say the word, but sea theories, is that they paint a very bleak picture. There's little hope. I'm not trying to say that some of what the sea theorists say may not have some truth in it. After all, we wouldn't believe it. But I wonder if this is about you succumbing to sea theories. I also have this view that the sea theories are largely created by the elites, the rich, the powerful. And maybe, just maybe, it is because of collectively, if we all have a pessimistic attitude, then that's exactly what will happen. I don't know, I might not have got that right, so please stay with me to see how this really unfolds. I have to apologise to you. When I introduced this, I said it was the King of Swords, and it's not, it's the King of Wands. King of Swords is about a very knowledgeable person, but the King of Wands is more an action person. Probably something of an entrepreneur. And I think it does alter things quite dramatically. Because I think you fancy yourself as an entrepreneur, and it's your own, I don't want to use the word greed, hubris, let's say, that might be creating what I see as a very problematic year for you. And it's a great shame, you know, because it's the year of the water dragon. Water. Not water. Wood dragon, which you normally associate with wealth. And I think there are opportunities for wealth, but I think you have too high an opinion of your own ability, and I think you probably get taken quite a few times. I think that's what this is about now. Sorry to have slightly misled you, but, you know, I mean, he's an admirable king, I don't want to take that away from it, and this does run through everything, but the deception just everywhere in this. And so I think your hubris is being exploited. Now, I think what you've done is and this is the past, you've looked at what's going on in the world and you've said, I've seen it all before. And when there are crises, it's a golden opportunity for people to make money. And I think that's what you've been trying to do. But you haven't noticed a major shift. And there was a paradigm shift that went on. And the greed, the lies, the deception are going to be punished. I don't think it's you that's involved in these greed, lies and deception. But what you haven't understood is that this is a major, major change. So I think you've seen the opportunity and thought, well, you know, land is cheap or whatever is cheap at the moment. I need to be exploiting that. I need to be doing something about it. And there's no doubt that many people did that during the health crisis. So while the rest of us were locked in our homes, fearful of, well, unable to go out, we've had a mask on, certainly in Indonesia, unable to leave the island of Java in my case, and often unable to leave the area that I happened to be in Java for most of the time. And while that was going on, the rice paddy on the west side of Bali was being bought up by property developers to turn into sort of executive ghettos. And I'm not saying that's what you've done. I think you just spotted that people were making money and thought, yeah, now is the time to be investing. Now, I've no idea if these executive ghettos will work. I certainly see it as a bad thing for Bali. But an awful lot of people have invested in things that really probably aren't going to give them a return on that investment. Could that be you? I wonder. Right now we have the card of deception. I mean, there's an awful lot of deception in this world. An awful lot. But I think people are exploiting your hubris, and that's why it's cropping up so much for you. You know, I got an email the other day purporting to be from the British government about having logged on to what is it? Anyway, the government website, you know, and it looked very official. Now I know you're going to say, they always look official. But I couldn't see how it was an obvious phishing email. Now I didn't click on anything, so I was fine. But, you know, I spent well over a day trying to get to the bottom of it. And yeah, it was a phishing email, even though I couldn't see how. But maybe my phone had already blocked those elements that would be phishing. So, you know, there are scams all around us, but I think this is more to do with business, more to do with you entering a business relationship with people and you being deceived. Almost a winning at all cost attitude that they have. And that's so, you know, I live in Indonesia, and that's so typical that people rarely see foreign investors as contributing to the Indonesian economy, but as the target for taking their money. And I think it's that sort of an attitude that's going on here. And I think you've jumped into it feet first, unfortunately. Now in the future we still have deception. Now maybe this is just one big deception that's gone on. Maybe. But I mean, it's very bitter. It's a real stabbing in the back. And it causes an end to maybe everything. You know, maybe you lose everything through it. Certainly it's going to be dramatic. And maybe just how dramatic doesn't play out during this year. It's next year. When you no, I think it's a separate deception. I think it's yet another deception. Yeah. Gosh goats, I feel so sorry for you. Well, as I say, it's your own hubris that's got you here, but you know, yeah, no, it's happening twice. Well, at least twice, for sure. Oh dear. Leads to the outcome is a card of deception. Now this is a deception whereby they might not get away with it. So you might spot this deception and that leads you into another deception. That might be the way to see it. The person certainly knows that what they're doing is wrong, whereas the final deception and the earlier deception, I think they felt that they were entirely justified. This one, that feels like there's more humanity to it. Now, I'm not saying that it was a purpose decoy for you to fall into another deception, but that is the effect of it. I think it's something of a decoy. Not necessarily that it's planned, but it's, you know, the effect is that you spot this as deception and it leads you to fall for another one. Now if you remember, I said I don't know if this deception is successful, and it's something for a decoy which leads you to another deception. And that other deception is a bitter ending. Well, we have a bitter ending here, which I think is a different one. And I think it comes from this deception that I say maybe you spot. But if it were to happen, then you wouldn't fall for the next deception because you've got nothing left to give, as it were. It's a dog's chance, isn't it? It doesn't matter. It's as though the universe is out to get you. It all feels karmic, although there's no indication that it is. Gosh, it doesn't feel nice at all, I've got to say. Remember you have free will. Remember these are just energies. Take them as warnings. Do take them as warnings. And I think they're warnings about your hubris. Now the outcome, I can read a lot more positively than I'm going to, but given all that's said, I'm pretty certain I see what it is. And that is multiple opportunities, but some are poison chalices. And it seems almost certain that you picked the poison chalice because we've got that stabbed in the back, bitter ending. So this is what I mean. I think you spot a deception, or it's quite minor. And in doing so, it leads you to a false sense of security. And there's even a bigger deception, which is probably unconnected, but an even bigger deception that you fall feet first into. Let me just give you an illustration, and it's absolutely an illustration, it's not financial advice. And maybe the minor deceptions that I'm talking about, or the ones that you see through, are at a sort of personal level, people that you're in business with or work with or something like that. But it makes you think, well, maybe I ought to be a bit more careful with my money or something like that, and put all your money in something like Bitcoin. I mean, maybe Bitcoin's good, or gold, but they crash. That's the sort of feeling I'm getting about this whole thing. I think we need a bit of clarity before I'm totally nailed to this pessimistic, well, it does look pessimistic, but let's get a bit of clarity. Now I'm going to get some clarity on what I see as the poison chalice energy. First card of clarity is the Six of Swords. Interesting. That's you moving on and putting the past behind you. The next card is a card of conflict, and the final card is a broken heart. So let's look at these individually. First card of clarity is one of you putting the past behind you and dumping baggage. And this clarifies this poison chalice that I see it as. So, I think it's from these deceptions, you've decided not to fall for that sort of thing again, to look for something entirely different. And so you've jumped into something that's entirely different, You've put that behind you and said, well, I'm not going to do that again. So, for example, you've thought, well, yeah, there's no point in investing in cryptocurrency, for example. I'll put my money in gold. But we know that equally is the wrong thing. Well, sorry, these are just examples, but that equally is the wrong thing to do. And you're being rushed into it. I think maybe I gave you not a very good illustration then. I said you shifted from crypto to gold. And maybe a better illustration is that you shifted from crypto to a business, maybe even a community sort of business, a social enterprise. You could be like me, and that is thinking, The world is changing. We can't rely on those people or those institutions in the past that we've relied on. So we need to do something at a community level. But knowing that I'm a foreigner in Indonesia, if I tried to do something for the community, inevitably I would be a target, you know. And so we now have an energy of conflict, disagreement. You know, you would like to spend your money maybe doing some good, but others just want the money, as it were. But maybe it can be talked through. Maybe it can be resolved. But I don't think it's going to be easy to be, and this is the fundamental problem. So, I mean, it's the same with me. You know, I'd like to do something for the community in Java I live in. But, you know, it's a supreme arrogance to think just because I've got more money than most that I can change the trajectory of a community. Yeah, it's sobering, isn't it? And all in all, it breaks your heart. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you a bit more about myself, and that is, when I built my house in the mountains in Java, I looked at it and thought, what a beautiful place. It looks like Ubud was, Ubud in Bali, 30 years ago, or more than 30 years ago, because I was there about 35 years ago, and even then it was more developed than where I live in Java. Nevertheless, the scenery's a bit like Ubud, you know. So I'm thinking, well, you know, maybe I could do some sort of a tourism business, build some villas, and, you know, what have you. But in building the house, my own family, who were involved in it, ripped me off left, right and centre. Now, I've no stomach for building villas or invest in anything there now. Even though people are looking to me to do it, there's no way. There's no way, you know, I don't want to know. Because if had I built the villas, then I could have created employment for all of the people, including my family, but, you know, they just ripped me off. And to a certain degree, they're brought up that way. They believe that a white person is going to come on and get off an aeroplane and make them rich. So they don't see the long term. And I've been reminded of that because we've been using a sort of a handyman while we're there. And we gave him, you're going to laugh, we gave him $100, well, say $150. To say, go and get some materials, and, you know, this is to pay for some of what you're doing. Anyway, we've always trusted him because he seemed very good and honest. And he came out with the most outrageous stories about why he no longer had the $150. And so we just asked him to write it all down and we'd take a look at it, you know. And in the end, he'd sort of tried to make off with $15, but we got it there on paper. So we said, okay, well, that's all right. You know, next time you work for us, it doesn't matter. But he'll not do it again. But it was a reminder to me, you know, that $150 is a lot of money to people around where we live. And yeah, we have to be careful. But it does break my heart that I can't do more because I can't trust people. Now, I've only told you that because I think it's a very similar thing that you go through this year. Goats, you have to see this reading as a warning to you. It's a warning about your own hubris. You fancy yourself as a bit of an entrepreneur. You fancy yourself as being fairly sophisticated. You want to do something, but you're going to get taken for a ride maybe multiple times this year. And now you do have free will, you can change it. So this is simply a warning. You see, I think you've looked at the past and said, oh, I've seen situations like this before. I know what I'm doing, I can get through it. But I think there's been fundamental changes. And I think there's so little opportunities, real opportunities out there, and so many scams and poison chalices. And you begin the year with a scam. It's somebody, winner takes all. You know, that's your introduction to the year. And then it looks like another scam. Maybe it's one that you see through, but your reaction to it could well lead you into yet another scam. And that's a major one. Now, what would prevent you from leading into the major scam is this other scam going forward and you losing a lot from it. So, you know, if it doesn't get you one way, it's going to get you the other. And how you fall for this major scam, which I think you lose almost everything as a result, is there are many opportunities there and you rush to these opportunities. And some are very different to what you've done before, but, you know, you think, well, look, I got scammed on that, you know, I don't want to do that again. So you get into an area that you're not that comfortable with, but, you know, you're full of hope. And you end up arguing with people that you're working with, maybe partners, I don't know, but you end up in struggles and arguments. And it breaks your heart. It breaks your heart. And you are going to be heartbroken, goats, this year unless you take heed of this. The messages I've been getting from the universe that is we shouldn't put up barriers and guards. But goat, it does feel like you should. Maybe not to be wary, but just to stop jumping into investments and businesses and what have you, and get a measure of yourself and what you can realistically do and achieve. Sorry to have to tell you that.